Welcome to the Church and State Auxiliary, a podcast where we review people, their beliefs, and how it affects their politics. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and not a reflection of any company or organization or group. We invite you to listen, to ask questions, and follow along.
To go back, we are quickly becoming a society in which, again, going back to that binary, we can either have communication or we can have conflict. And,
Right.
and it seems like the culture right now is on a on a fast track to this idea of confrontation.
Correct.
And I honestly don't think that that's what the majority of people
No.
want. I don't think the majority of
And
people want
conversely,
confrontation.
so it seems or appears that, because political violence occurs on both sides. So this is the assassination of Melissa Hortman, June 14 of 2025. So this year, she and her husband were shot and killed in their Brooklyn Park home in what authorities have described as a targeted political attack. Now, if you read further, the hard thing becomes, I don't know what the person's motives were. And this is what scares me. This is what really scares me. Is I was reading an article from NPR, and I'm going to read some excerpts from this NPR study. So the people that are quoted in the NPR article are Jacob Ware, a research fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. And the other is Amy Cooter, who is deputy director at the Institute for Countering Digital Extremism. And it says, Cooter says this, there's a lot of subjectivity that goes into this. Basically, it's up to teams of researchers deciding their own criteria for what counts or doesn't count into a particular data set, and this is in regards to extremism or domestic terrorism. For these reasons, Cooter and Ware said that they have different assessments about some of the incidents that the CSIS, that stands for the Center of Strategic and International Studies, so I'll go back and say they have different assessments about some of the incidents that the CSIS study included and excluded in its analysis. This is a quote. We really need to get statements or justifications, motivations from perpetrators, said Ware. I don't think we have, this is in regards to the Charlie Kirk assassinations, I don't think we have that in the Charlie Kirk assassination or the Minnesota assassination. And this is what really scares me, is when we're looking at these data sets on political unrest, violence, what scares me is the people generating the data are saying, well, it's really up to interpretation of what quantifies as violence or an attack or an issue. And me, as a very concerned citizen, it's like Melissa Hortman. She was a Democrat. She should not have been assassinated and killed. I don't care what the guy's reason behind it. I mean, if you type it into good old AI, right, it talks about that he had a hit list of 45 elected officials, all Democrats. Okay, he shouldn't have been doing that. Okay, so I don't need. The issue is I feel like in these data sets, it's like, well, we really need to analyze the reasons behind it and understand the mentality of these attacks. And it's like, okay, going and assassinating anybody because of the way they believe is wrong.
I think it should. As we've discussed, it should be wrong, right?
It has to be
okay,
wrong.
it has to be wrong. Otherwise, real quickly, just in a 30-second, 30,000-foot view, if I can kill someone as justifiable homicide because I disagree with you, that opens the door to pandemonium and chaos.
Oh, it's horrible.
Anybody that disagrees with their neighbor can all of a sudden take their shotgun over to their neighbor's house, blow them away, and say, it was justifiable.
Right.
We disagreed. I didn't like the way he painted his house. I didn't like the way he parked his cars. I didn't like something. And then all of a sudden, because I have a perceived offense that is simply intellectual offense, it's not a physical offense, I can go carry out some heinous crime against them and justify it. And we've
Yes.
got to stop that. We have to stop that.
Yes,
Right?
because that, again, I go back to these articles that I've been reading, and again, I've pulled it from Daily Wire, which is more conservative, Time, which leans, I think, more liberal, NPR, which is more, I think it leans more left, but according to everyone, it's kind of the bipartisan, it's, equal ground. The issue is no one is really condemning. They're just talking about it and saying, well, it depends on how you look at the data about how many right-wing extremisms happen versus left-wing extremisms. And the fact of the matter is, it all needs to stop, right?
But because as long as we continue to justify it, it's going to continue to grow.
Yes.
As long as we say, okay, it's okay if you kill this political leader because he holds this particular view in the American culture, and it's okay to kill this other person because they hold an opposing, equally as extreme view over here. So if we want to do that, then all we have to do to degrade into total pandemonium is begin to just push more people into these extreme views.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, the termination of those people is considered justifiable.
Absolutely.
Right.
So let's start addressing maybe, hopefully, somewhat of a repair. Repair or solution to this. And I think first and foremost, political leaders need to lead by example. Okay. I mean, again, through the Time magazine article, I find it hilarious, right? So you read through it, and it's talking about how Trump called for a crackdown on radical left, but right-wing extremists are responsible for more political violence, right? So even the article is setting up both sides against the other, right? And as you read through the article, it's kind of interesting because it talks about some of the ceremonies held for Charlie Kirk at the end of his death. And it was a lot of prayers, right? And so it's got a picture of this one group praying for Charlie Kirk, and the title is White Nationalists Participate in Torchlit March. Okay. I looked up the view of white nationalist, and it's this extreme, basically white Nazi party, which I don't think that's actually what was happening. So even Time magazine is perpetrating this highly elevated name calling, right? I don't think these people were white nationalists, okay? And so they're persecuted. They're not persecuting. They are persecuting those that are coming to mourn for someone that they loved and respected, Charlie Kirk. And then so they're trying to condemn the right and elevate the left and the reasons they're doing it. And you look at other places where it condemns what the left is doing. You talk to Trump or J.D. Vance, and they criticize the left for what they are doing. And what we're seeing is these broad categories coming into play. Okay, I don't think having a prayer ritual should categorize you as a white nationalist, right? But that's what the left views it as. If I go and have a prayer on campus for someone that I love and supported, I'm now a white nationalist, right? And vice versa, right? If I have said something mean to somebody, well, that's an attack, right? That's an attack on myself. And it's like, okay, we have to bring this language down and talk about, okay, having a prayer group on campus is not some type of extremist group, right? And conversely, if I'm having a conversation, that is not an attack. It is simply a conversation in which disagreement has occurred.
Right.
So let's stop, kind of like what you're talking about. Let's stop putting people in these broad categories of labels and go back to say, okay, let's find that common ground. There has to be some form of common ground that we can decide on.
Mm-hmm. Or the other thing is, we just have to, if it continues, you just have to assume that it's being orchestrated, right? That there is some type of, orchestrated movement to divide and to categorize and to stir up dissent. And the people that are doing that, they're standing outside those groups, watching it happen and applauding for the destruction that is to follow.
Right.
So,
I mean,
and those are all conspiracy.
Yeah, but getting on that bunny trail a little bit, I mean, we all know, you can study it. Bad news and conflict sells a lot more news than, good news and peace, right? I mean, that's stuff that people aren't really interested in listening to. So, I mean, it's like that article. It is set up, I feel, to, make you read further, because whether you're left or right, it triggers you in both different categories, right? And so it's going to make you want to read the entire article. So I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, this is probably controversial, which we've already been talking about, controversial things. News is all about the money, right? I mean, if you want your news business to do well, you've got to sell newspaper, you got to sell articles. So if you want to make money, you got to give these really divisive headlines. So,
and articles.
And
not
articles.
Just the headlines anymore. It used to be just the headline. Now anymore, the articles are so biased that, it's meant to drive anger in the person reading the article. That's the purpose of the article.
Correct.
We've moved away from information to emotional control, where we
Yes.
write an article not for its news content and its factual content, but we've moved away from that to articles are designed and written to drive anger, to drive you to read further, to find another article, to click another one, to consume more information, and which fundamentally just drives those fear elements within you and anger elements within you to drive a response. I mean, that, in many cases, that's what the news articles, if we want to call them news articles, the opinion articles are all about, is driving emotional response.
Correct. Because at the end of the day, data is boring. I mean, if data wasn't boring, then we'd have a lot more people
Analyzing
it or looking into it and reading it, right? But, I mean, the whole point of AI, or a large portion of AI, is to look through data and come up with a summary of these reports and information. So, yeah, data is boring, and actually digging down and getting actual facts is really hard and boring. So, again, it goes back to our original conversation. You have to work hard to be informed, to be able to have conversations on a variety of different topics, and trying to orchestrate change through that.
Thanks for listening to the Church and State Auxiliary. We hope you enjoyed the content in this podcast. If you did, give us a like, a follow, or subscribe. If you have questions, leave comments down below. Thanks again for listening.